Hello everyone, welcome back to the Metro Monthly Update. This is the monthly update for November. I'm Derek Boyd, the CEO and Chairman of Metro, and this is...
I'm Vladimir Stakov, the President's Secretary. So let's get right into it because if you guys remember my last prediction for last month that we would hopefully just be able to come out here and be like, hey guys, we paid off the investors, bye.
That's what happened, right?
That is one of the things that happened.
That's
but unfortunately, that's not all of it.
No. That's it, right? We're done with the video. Update's done. November's over. We're out, guys. Peace. See you in December.
So, first thing, this is on the good news side. So, we actually finally got Barnwell rented. For those of you that don't remember, Barnwell was in a bit of a disastrous state. We talked about it before, how it was our lowest asset that him and I have personally. So, we decided to go ahead and invest it into the company to give it some kind of asset to start. Well, good news is that we actually just recently got it financed. So, we got $500 down for it, and these people are going to be paying us $400 a month. Now, that doesn't pad it doesn't pad our finances too much. However, but it still does help increase our overall budget, which obviously for our company, that's a phenomenal thing. Now we're going to start getting into the shit shows. And that's all this month was for us. It was a bunch of shit.
Yeah, this was a bit of a transitionary month, for sure.
So, let's go ahead and move on to our next talking point. Mobile home, the 12th one. The infamous 12th mobile home that we have been talking about for months.
So, if you guys remember, when we originally signed this contract to get the mobile home park, we had gotten a promise that another mobile home was going to get moved in and that it was going to be taken care of as far as hooked up, ready to rent, all that stuff, right? Well, outside of the condition of the home. Well, if you also remember, the previous owner is pretty much about as hands-off and as lazy as you can possibly get. So, we've had to do all the initiatives, and as you sort of kind of heard from time and time again, we've had issues dealing back and forth with getting the actual mobile home physically moved. And there was also a situation at one point about 2 months ago, we had it temporarily moved again because the previous place it was located, they were taking the lot back, and then it was a whole disaster there. But anyway,
let me go ahead and jump in. Discard all of that information. We actually found out a lot more about the truth this month, and we're absolutely livid.
So to catch you up to speed on everything, we had a very, very, very last minute attempt of getting this mobile home moved in. It was, okay, so if you remember the process of how to get something done when it comes to getting the mobile home moved, you have to go to the county, get a permit pulled, then the actual moving company is the one that can physically show that permit that they can now use to grab the mobile home and physically move it. So that's why they're like taking up a lot of space on the roads and whatnot. So it's like the county's like, yes, we allow you to go take up a lot of space on the roads and drive down the road in case there's any liability issues and stuff. Anyway, so they had a permit pulled last year, November 2nd, which means it expires a year later, November 2nd.
And keep in mind, the permit that was pulled, it was pulled to move it from a location in Greenville, South Carolina.
No, it was Greenwood or something.
I'm sorry, Greenwood.
Yeah, it was
Greenwood, South Carolina, and it was to be moved over to Belton, South Carolina. Yeah. The person that was, I disgustingly say, in charge of the move, was Scruggs Mobile Home. I'm sorry, Scruggs Mobile Home Movers. This dude is the definition of incompetent, and I'm telling you guys now, if you ever pick them as your mobile home mover, there's a very high chance nothing will get done, your permits will expire, and your mobile home might be potentially demolished, because the thing is, whatever he did with it, he moved it illegally. He was never supposed to have moved it off of the lot and then placed it into a temporary lot, because that's not what the permit is for. You're supposed to follow the permit.
So when you get the permit, you have to designate exactly where it's currently at. Get the permit for allowing you to move it from that spot to specifically the spot you're putting it in. There can't be any transitionary spaces in between. It literally goes from point A to point B, and the permit says, yes, we approve this. In our case, it went from point A to B to B to C to C to D, which the B and C part of it was technically illegal, but not our problem because, well, once again, we had no hands in any of this. We were just facilitating the transaction quicker. But long story short, point is, we did wind up getting the mobile home finally moved, and we do have some pictures that we'll attach here so you can physically see it. So here's what actually happened. So, as he was mentioning, Scruggs was the original mobile home moving company that we were using. And as you also remember from conversations in the past, I've repeatedly tried to get them out there, to get them to meet up with either me or our maintenance guy to physically figure out what we had to get done to the park to get it moved in, because there's like brush and stuff that's got to get cut back. The land itself had to be leveled to an extent, pretty much cleared out so that way you can put the mobile home in. A bunch of stuff has to get done. It's not just as simple as getting some paperwork done and then moving it in. So anyhow, repeatedly tried to get him to come out there. Every so often he did. We did come up to somewhat of a conclusion of what we had to get done to get the stuff taken care of. We go ahead and do all of what we're required to do. I then reach out to the guy like 2 weeks prior to the deadline being done. So this is actually in October. And the guy just basically doesn't answer me for a while. Reaches out to me Monday, November 1st. So remember, this is got to be done by November 2nd. Monday, November 1st.
That's when the permit expires, by the way. When you pull a permit for something like that, you have a year on it, usually.
Yeah. So he calls me on Monday, November 1st and says, hey, I got another guy who's going to do me a favor. He's going to take over and bring your mobile home for you, and they're going to try to knock it out today. And I'm like, okay, well, at least great. At least it's getting done today. I don't care who's doing it, just get it freaking done. Well, come to find out, as the day goes on, they do wind up grabbing the mobile home, and they do wind up moving it, which also, by the way, is sort of illegal depending on how they do it, because technically, once again, you have to designate who the company is that's moving it, and this was a completely different company, and I didn't know if they did any paperwork exchanges in which they said like, hey, you're taking over my rights into this transaction. Otherwise, if they just called a guy up and was like, hey, move it, that's technically illegal because this guy's licensed for doing this job. And I don't know if these other guys were, once again, they didn't pay for that spot. So anyhow, don't care. All I wanted is the mobile home moved. So it winds up getting moved out there that day, and I physically drive out there to go get it all put in place. Well, the people that moved it were significantly more competent than the guy that I've been working with for the past 6+ months. And we go down to the spot, and they tell me that they physically cannot get it in there. It is impossible because there's so many regulations and issues that are wrong with that particular spot.
Basically, everything Scruggs had sat there and said about what needed to be done, all of it was BS.
Yeah.
He had no clue what actually was being required, not just to get it in there, but also by the county to then be able to facilitate the rest of it, which is getting like utilities hooked up on it and reinstated and so on and so forth. He didn't explain any of that. And like they were looking at it like, we have no clue how we're going to be able to move this in.
Yeah, because there's a couple of issues with getting it in. So there's like one, it can only be so high, it's considered dangerous otherwise, and the county in this particular area only allows for 7 blocks, and what that means is it's literally the big cinder blocks that are underneath your home. So they can only allow 7 blocks as the highest point, and the way that our land sloped down, the back third roughly of the home would have been on about 8 to 9 blocks, so it was 2 blocks way too high. So that means we'd either have to grade the land or put more land up there to build it up, which, by the way, all has to be done before the thing's even moved onto the land, which obviously means we were short on time. Now, luckily, because it was moved onto the property, it's fine, because the permit's really just for moving it across the road. But anyway, the point is that I didn't feel like grading it. I'm not doing all this stuff when it was already last minute as it is. It's already here. I just want to go ahead and get it in place. So what we wound up having to do, because it wasn't going to fit that regulation, and the other issue is it has to be on a couple setbacks. Like, it has to be, what setbacks are is literally how far back the thing is, whether it's a mobile home, a house, a shed, whatever you're building, a permanent fixture has to be set back from something. So usually it's your property lines. In this case, it was property lines, other mobile homes, and utilities. So like the power pole as well as septic tanks. So we had to kind of finagle it, mathematically measure out where the nearest mobile home was, where the utilities were. Property line wasn't an issue because it's way off of that. But where the septic tanks are. Once we got all that figured out, we actually got it, and it had to be at this weird twisted angle. So we wound up getting it put in. Now here's the thing, it didn't get put in that day, it wound up getting put in about 2 days later, because it got moved the next day and then readjusted a day after that, where they finally put the piers or the whatever called, the cinder blocks underneath of it. So point is, we wound up getting it all done. But that wasn't the end of the disaster. So the other issue is once again, as you remember our original deal with the previous owner, he was supposed to be paying for all this, and we're just doing nothing more than receiving the benefit of it because we technically were paying for it in the loan. And, well, he didn't pay anything, apparently. The Scruggs never got any money, thought we were going to pay the whole time, thought we were just regular end buyers, and obviously these other people didn't get paid, so nobody got paid to do any of this work. So well, we had to get them to do the work, and in order for them to do it, we had to pay them. So we physically had to come out of pocket to do it. Now, I did talk ahead of time with the previous owner, and he was totally fine with it, with us just paying for it and then basically getting reimbursed in what we would normally pay the mortgage, so basically we're just getting credited. So we had to pay $3,000 out of pocket to get this all moved, which, once again, could have been way worse, because Scruggs was originally going to charge $3,500, and then there was also a bunch of other issues too, where there was like extra blocks that needed to be paid for because it was going to be higher up, with more labor and stuff. It could have been upwards of like $4,300, and we got it luckily down to $3,000. These other guys really saved us a crap ton of money, and these guys have been helpful as hell. So anyways, point is we finally got it moved in, and it cost us $3,000 out of pocket for now. We still have to get the utilities hooked up, got to get the inspector out there to get everything else done, put the underskirting and all that stuff in, but at least it's physically in place. Now, with it all being said, here's the other information we learned.
Here's the drama.
Yeah.
This is drama alert.
About this other company that moved from taking it over from Scruggs, and then they gave us some more information on the background of our entire situation.
So this retard over at Scruggs, which again, whatever information I can find on him or whatever else, I'll make sure to put in this video so you guys know to avoid this like the plague. And I'm willing to argue this tooth and nail. Number one, the previous owner, we 100%, without a shadow of a doubt, believe that he did pay Scruggs to move that mobile home from Greenwood down to Belton. What we believe happened now is that Scruggs took that money, moved the mobile home into a temporary area because it wasn't set up and ready to go at the mobile home park, and never relayed any of that information over to the owner. Now, no, that's the first thing. So I believe he stole the original owner's money. I genuinely
Because
do.
what was weird too, jumping on that, is that the amount that Scruggs was telling us before that was paid was a dramatically less amount, which would make sense because he didn't do any hookups or placing it anywhere. Because it was like $1,900 or something like that.
Yes.
And then he was going to charge us about $4,200 for the extra labor and whatnot. So it would make a lot more sense that, yeah, if he just placed it on a temporary lot, $1,900 would just be taking it, ripping it out of one place, and just literally parking it another.
Yep. And then here's where it gets even more like suspicious to me, is that then after that, so that's the first thing that happened, right? Then these people who actually moved the mobile home and knew what they were doing, it's a completely different company that he just basically got involved to sit there and do this. These other people they got to move the mobile home were very knowledgeable, and they informed us that they were actually the ones that moved it originally to the temporary lot, because once again, he needed help with this mobile home. And we're like, okay. So this guy hasn't done any of the work the entire time for any of the mobile home, but it's been trying to collect the money on all of it. So this mobile home has been moved twice now by the same people, but has nothing to do with him individually. Now, let's get to point 3. And this is where I nearly absolutely lost my shit, and I was actually even asking Derek if we should consider a lawsuit against him. If you guys remember, we talked about this multiple months ago. I can't remember what update video it was. That where the mobile home was sitting, it was going to get sold. The land was going to get sold, and the mobile home had to be cleared off.
September or August?
Yeah.
No, it was in August. It had to be moved by September.
Yeah. And so the thing is that we sat there and we told you guys about it. That's why we were trying to rush it to get it done faster. And then we come to find out that from the same mobile home movers, the guys that are competent, not Scruggs, the guys that are competent, that mobile home already had a demolition permit pulled on it, and that it was scheduled to be demolished on that land, and that the only reason it wasn't demolished wasn't because it was moved to another temporary lot like we had been told. It's because one of the dudes in the crew of the mobile home movers literally put it on his land to use it as a temporary storage space.
Because it was in good enough. He literally said the only reason he kept it was because it was in good enough condition. He didn't want to just dispose of it, and so he was like, I'll just take it and put it on my land. It's a free mobile home. That's what he thought at the time.
Our 12th mobile home literally was going to be destroyed.
And it was technically stolen.
And it was 100% Scruggs' fault.
Yeah. Good news is I'm happy as hell it was stolen, because it would have gotten scrapped. Bad news is that, yeah, I mean, this whole situation, if we didn't have literally the grace of divine intervention come in, where some guy literally was just like, nah, I'd just rather keep it on my land instead. If it wasn't for that situation, if that guy wasn't literally there at that time and place, our mobile home would have gotten scrapped. And the worst part is nobody told us a thing. We didn't know this until the day we were getting them to move it, because I was physically talking to them, and they're like, by the way, did you know where this house was or what was going on with this situation? I'm like, I don't know anything. Scruggs was relaying everything to me, and he's like, yeah, this was scrapped, dude. This was gone. He's like, back in September, whatever the hell it was, he's like, this was 100% a done deal. We were already driving it to the place, and then he pointed that to the guy, I don't know his name on top of my head, pointed that to the guy, he's like, this guy over here, he said he'd rather just keep it because he needed some extra storage on his land, so he just wanted putting some furniture and stuff in it for a couple months. And then when you called back up saying you wanted it, Scruggs called us up, and we were like, yeah, we do actually have it. We didn't. It's supposed to be scrapped, and Scruggs was like, "Oh no, there's like a permit and some stuff or whatever you pulled for it." And he's like, they were just as basically lost.
Keep in mind, we gave this moron Scruggs here the permit back in like July that we started working with him because he was the last link to get it done. So keep in mind of all of this. Once again, I'm gonna re-summarize it. This retard stole money.
We can't legally clarify it, but it is a very strong assumption.
It shouldn't have been moved to the temporary lot to begin with. It never was supposed to have been moved there.
Yeah, if you're like outside looking in, it does make a lot of sense that he basically took the money.
And then the next thing he does is he's blatantly lying to us about the situation of it, because he had to have known that demolition was pulled on it, and he had to have known that these guys ended up sitting there and being the ones that had to enact the demolition on it. And then he has never done any of the work himself to move a single mobile home himself. I actually genuinely want to call out for his license. I don't think he has one. I actually want to see a license, because when it comes to mobile home moving, you have to be licensed, because the thing is, with that license, you're allowed to buy what's it called, like day liability insurance or whatever. It's liability
like
insurance.
For the moment.
Yeah, it's liability insurance for that one specific time, moment, and instance, and it covers the general travel path. You have to. You can't do it otherwise. And I don't think, like, the fact that this guy doesn't do any of the work, he has no idea what the hell's going on. He potentially stole the original owner's money. He was then literally allowing our mobile home to get terminated and demolished, all for the sake of then just turning around and at the last second basically figuring out that it was still there, and then was trying to get it all done and fixed up with the original people who had done everything up to this point. Absolutely mind-boggling to me.
So what I did find out separately to this is that one thing that apparently mobile home companies do, and apparently a lot of licensed companies do this, is that whenever they do get a contractual agreement after a permit is pulled, so basically the point of the permit is that is now legally their claim, they own that kind of thing, they're in the work towards, I should say, they'll literally outsource it to somebody else and then cut off the top. But now their license is still at risk, so if they outsource it to somebody else and they screw it up, they still take the blame. That's why they take some off the top. But most likely that's what this guy does. He basically just gets a bunch of people to whatever, like, you know, a bunch of people have homes that they got to move. He then goes and reaches out to them and says, hey, I have a mobile home company, I can move them all. Gets them on contract, aka a permit, and then sells out that for like a discount to somebody else, and then takes off the top. So I think that's what he's most likely doing. That's also what these guys sort of informed us that he's done before, because they do a lot of his work for him. So generally speaking, it's not illegal, it's just a pain in the ass, because it's like...
By the way, that's fine. That's no different than being a wholesaler in a real estate transaction or anything else like that. The problem is that had this have gone south, and had we have lost the mobile home, had it actually been demolished, had the permit expired, and then because the thing is, I'm telling you now, if that permit would have expired, we would have started doing investigation. We'd start going out on sites, we would have started looking around, and then when we can't find our mobile home, he would have sat there and been facing a very fat lawsuit. And I don't know if it's criminal, but a potential criminal complaint as well. And the thing is that it's insane to me, because of his own incompetence, that he potentially caused this entire disaster to happen. And the only thing that we can do at this point is just forewarn you guys, never, ever, ever do anything with him. That's the best that we can do at this moment in time, because while there is potential damages there, it comes up to the point where is there even enough to really bring up an argument? And sometimes, no matter how upset you might be about something, we talked about this in way earlier videos, let it go. Like, court is always the last resort.
Yeah, exactly. So, anyhow, that's the whole wrap up with that mobile home. We finally got to put in place.
It's there. Not hooked up on utilities yet. Obviously, like, it needs a fair amount of work to get to rentable condition, but it is there, and actually, it's really not that bad.
It's freaking huge.
Yeah, it's big.
Surprisingly large. So.
It is a big boy.
Good news is that when it is up and running, we'll definitely be able to get at least probably 750, 800 out of it.
Oh, yeah.
Downside is because it does need a decent amount of work, and then the utilities and whatnot, and plus our maintenance guy is still behind. Probably won't be up and running until maybe January at best, depending on certain circumstances. But generally speaking, it's there. We've made huge progress. Start. You know?
Yep. So now we're gonna move on to the next one. You guys are gonna be laughing about this one.
Oh, it's just the okay, cop one. Okay.
We had our first shooting at the mobile home.
Yeah, always some freaking drama, man.
So we had our first shooting at the mobile home park. So to basically back it up, our tenants over at 124. This is between two tenants. So this was the ones over at 104 and 124 were the two culprits in this situation. So what ended up happening is that one of the tenants from 124 ended up going and like rummaging through the trash of 104. I know it sounds weird, just hang tight with me. They went up there and they rummaged through the trash of 104. Then they got booed off by 104, telling them not to do that and not to come there because they were making a big mess there. And like not keeping the trash together. So then when 104 left to go get something to eat, 124 came back and sat there and continued to like rummage underneath their house now. So they went from rummaging on the trash that was about, I'd maybe say like what, 30, 50 feet away from the house from where like the trash can and stuff like that were. Yeah. So they went from that now inside underneath their house. And then when 104 came back, they saw 124 running out from underneath their house saying, oh, by the way, you have a water leak, and just bolting back down. And they're like, what? And then they look under it, and sure enough, the pipe is busted and water is just gushing everywhere. Like it was like crushed, busted. And so... And
on a spot that had just recently gotten repaired about a month ago.
And so...
It was a brand new pipe, so it wasn't like it just magically fell apart.
So 104 went down to 124 and beat down their door, got into an altercation, and then fired off a warning shot. And that is what led to police coming out there, doing a full investigation and everything else like that. Everyone was detained. Nobody was arrested. They collaborated all the stories across all the tenants that they possibly could and talked with a multitude of people, and they didn't feel that anything was warranted enough to actually make an arrest. But the annoyance is that we sat there and obviously like we had to pay out to fix it, and then 124 is now being charged for it. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are wondering, why aren't you just evicting 124? There's two reasons.
Two big reasons.
One
is particularly obvious.
Yeah. 124 is not in a good rentable condition, even for as low as $400 a month.
Quickly remind you to catch up on the timeline here. That was the first meth heads.
Yes, that was the meth head house, the one that we ended up taking the longest to finally get out.
And then from those meth heads, we moved over to this disaster of a attempt of fixing the house kind of thing, and then we would be moving into what? A potentially worse circumstance?
Yeah.
It's like just cut your losses, stay where you're at.
Yeah, so because of that, that's the main key factor. If there was an arrest that hadn't been made and charges being pressed, yes, we would act accordingly. That's the right moral thing to do. But because there wasn't, we kind of just let it go. We went and talked with everybody, collaborated their stories just to see what the police told us versus what actually happened and so on and so forth. And obviously let 124 know that, like, look, you're on thin ice with us as of this moment right now. And like just kind of continued on from there. And yeah, the other reason why we don't necessarily want to just get rid of them is kind of like what I just went over. Charges weren't pressed. Mm-hmm. yes, there's a very fair, valid argument you can make, but the best we decided to do instead is we just charged them for the repair of the water line for 104. That's what seemed to be the fairest option to go about it, and just walk away from it from there. So yeah. But hey, first shooting, man.
Hey.
I
Check
didn't
it off the list, baby.
I didn't expect it this soon.
Yeah, I mean we're what, 5 months in? Yeah, 5 months in, and we already got our shooting.
So yeah, that's what happened there. Now we're moving on to another issue, and this one is very aggravating because Derek and I both have a lot of opinions on this. So I recently got a letter in the mail informing me that the taxes on 136 had not been paid, and that it was sold at a tax auction for the taxable amount.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this might sound bad, but it's not the end of the world. It is levied with an ungodly amount of fees, though.
Oh yeah.
So basically, here's what happens. When you don't pay your taxes on a property, you have, I think it's like, what is it, like 2-month intervals, and they keep hiking up the three. You have 3-month intervals, and the government keeps hiking up the prices of your taxes.
And it depends on your county. So
yeah.
The average is 2 to 3%. So for example, unfortunately, the county we're in is 3%. So that means that if you were to be the guy who won the auction, then you get 12% return on your money back. Because if we would wait the entire year, all quarters, then we would have to pay 12%. So if you paid $1,000 in fees, we had to pay him $1,120 back.
And so what ends up happening is that after it goes through that process and you get constant notices about delinquent taxes and so on and so forth, if you don't take care of it, then the government will just, not in a sense seize, but they'll put up your property for a tax auction. Mm-hmm. Then whoever's the highest bidder on that tax auction can buy the taxes off of you. So in a sense, they paid for your taxes on your behalf. Now they have to sit on it for a year, and if you don't pay them back, which again, they're also gaining interest just like the government would, if you don't pay them back, then what ends up happening is that at the end of the year, they can actually seize that property and claim it for themselves.
And that's what tax deeds are. So like whenever you see these people that get like houses super cheap, so you'll see like a mansion that sold for like 20 grand, even though it's worth like 300,000. Mm-hmm. It's because the people themselves didn't pay for the taxes. Now that doesn't mean that you get the house for that 20 grand. So for example, if there was a loan on that mansion,
yes,
all you do is you pay 20 grand to buy out the other person's position. Now you're in that loan.
In a sense, you have the deed to the house and you have arguing rights of what can and can't be done with the house. Now, the thing is that with this, we cross-referenced it. We looked through all our paperwork. We looked through all our titles. We looked through everything that we had. And unfortunately, I think this auction is actually correct because we cannot find a matching title that we ever got for this particular property that we ever transferred over and that we ever paid for. Mm-hmm. There's nothing. It's the one missing one. All the other ones we've been able to link up to one property or another, but this one we are actually truly missing. And so unfortunately with this, we kind of are in a bad position on this because we either have to get the previous title, obviously from not the previous owner, but the previous owner who we believe is dead. Mm-hmm. And if we can't get it from them, then we have to potentially petition for like a lost title action or something like that through the DMV. And then if that fails, now we get into very creative real estate stuff where basically we pay for the taxes on it to close out the auction, satisfy the person who bought the taxes, and then go from there. Then we don't pay the taxes next year. Then we show up at our own tax auction for our own property, buy our own tax auction, default on it, and then we get a title that way because we basically just bought the taxes off of our own property.
It's a roundabout way of getting a deed on something.
Yeah.
But the only problem with it is if somebody outbids you, you can want to pay them more money for something.
Yeah.
So for example, if you were expecting to not pay taxes and then accounted for all the fees and you were like, okay, I'm going to pay an extra $500 doing this process, and then some jackass basically comes in and is like, this looks like a good property investment for me, and he just bids you up to like $5 grand. Well, if you really like your property, you're paying $5 grand plus the taxes.
But the thing is, though, is that that's more of a fear you probably will have with like brick and mortar homes.
Oh yeah.
because of the fact that it's a mobile home on a mobile home
And this is
lot.
just the mobile home.
Yeah.
Just to clarify.
It's not the land.
Yeah.
It's not the
We're
land.
not losing the land. It's just the mobile home that's up for grabs. Now, unfortunately, this is like our third best mobile home.
Yes.
So we
kind of want to keep it.
We are kind of pissed off that it's unfortunately not one of the other ones, but we're like, let them have it, let them rip it out of the ground. We're not paying tax anyways.
We're not going to say it here,
Yeah.
but we already have like 3 that if that was the case, we probably just would have wrote it out as a rental, made it month-to-month rental, wrote it out, and then if somebody ever came to take it off and repossess it, more power to you. You're actually saving us money.
So unfortunately, we kind of have to pay the tax on this one, which sucks because the typical tax rate on that property is around $110 per year. But because of all the fees and the fact that it wasn't paid at all last year at all, and a whole bunch of other crap that popped up. What was it like?
It was like, it's currently right now like 480.
Yeah.
And if we wait, it can go up to almost 700.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind, by the way, how disgusting this is. The taxes normally 110, 150.
Yeah.
After this entire process, and if you keep delaying and waiting till the last minute, you can 7 times your taxes. Imagine that on a regular home, that your tax bill's like 500, 700,000. Oh, it's disgusting how much money is being thrown out the window.
So with that being said, once we get this 12th mobile payment all squared away with the previous previous owner, because technically this is also his responsibility for not filing to get all this taken care of back when he owned it, we're also going to be taking this out of his pay as well, because this is all once again dealing with his crap. So we're just putting money where money's due because it's his problem.
Yeah.
Not ours. We're just fixing it.
Oh, actually, we forgot to mention earlier when we were talking about the movement. One of the things Derek obviously brought up, that he was talking with the original owner and whatnot. That $3,000 that we paid, like, it's just being taken out of the mortgage. Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, we're just being credited that every month. So basically, as you remember, the 1953, whatever it is that we pay him. So we paid $3,000 now. So that means that we still have $1,050 in credit, give or take. So that means that next month, if there's no additional fees added to it, like this auction, then we would only owe him like $800.
Yep.
Or $900. No, $800. But anyway, so the point is that we're just getting a credit for. We've already got a credit for this month. I go do it in the budget, and the next month we get an additional credit, whatever the difference is.
I will say this though, we are very fortunate in the situation that we are in, because we're in an owner finance, so this stuff can be fixed and can be worked out.
Oh yeah. If we
bought this outright, and I mean with a bank as well, like you get a loan for it and you pay the seller outright,
we would have to go after the guy.
Yeah, we would literally have to sue them to be able to get the money if they don't want to be fair and honorable about it. Which the thing is that this is where due diligence on property sales and mobile homes really matter. I'm very, very grateful that we got this experience, because again, you're not going to learn if you don't get your hands dirty. You're just not. But I'm very grateful we got this experience with an owner finance, where we are, to an extent, honestly guaranteed to get the money back from what was originally agreed upon, what was supposed to happen. The next mobile home, if Derek and I are ever buying it, loan, cash, or whatever else, we are doing a lot of investigation, a lot of internal looking, and we will not take it until whatever the agreed upon amounts or whatever the agreements that we had have all been finalized and done prior to us taking it, and so on and so forth.
Basically, if there's not a clean transition from one person to another, if there's any mucky waters in between or some gray areas, we got to figure out what we're going to do to work around that, or we're probably not going to do it.
If it's another owner finance kind of situation, sure, I'm willing to kind of let a lot of this stuff slide, and like we can move on from there. Yeah, and it'll be fair. It will be fair by the end of it. But if it's not this style of owner finance, and we're getting a bank loan or we're paying cash, no, it's going to be smooth sailing from start to finish.
You gotta think too, right? We would have had multiple suits with this guy already, like the previous owner, because we had the original problem.
Assuming they didn't want to be honorable, which the thing is, again, it's your job to then chase after them.
Yeah, whether they didn't want to be honorable, or if, like, we had to go after them because we bought it outright and they just thought that they didn't have to pay it because they're done. So they could have thought that they were being honorable because they were like, you did your due diligence and you paid for it, so it's your fault. So anyway, so the thing is that we would have to do multiple suits already. We had to do the first suit, if we would have, for the initial time we did the transition of going from the from remember, he never filed any of the mobile homes.
The mobile home titles and
yeah.
the taxes that are due on them.
So that was going to say. So you got to remember, there's the issue in that he never filed any of them. So there was the issue of getting it from the previous owner's name to ours, and the fact that he never paid taxes on any of them from a year ago. So there was two kind of problems with that. One is that he didn't even have direct ownership to sell it to us, so he was actually promising shit that he didn't have. And then two, he didn't pay for it. So we had to charge him for both. So that was one suit. Second suit would have been getting this 12th mobile home in, because that was wrapped into the agreement that he had to get this all put in place.
We even agreed to a higher price total over the course of like the 10 years that we have the loan for. We agreed to a higher price based off this 12th mobile home existing.
So he would have had to pay for it getting put in place, getting it all up and done, getting the movement and whatnot, as well as any permanent extensions or anything like that. He would have had to pay for all that. And then a third potential suit would have been the fact that now that we found out that he didn't even have the title, because he gave us all the titles he had except for the one that just got moved. So that means he didn't even have the other original title for the one that's going up for auction, which means that once again he promised us something he couldn't even sell to us, which means we had to sue him for that one too. So we would have just in the 5 months that we've been in this particular deal since closing, back after the guy, we've had to go through 3 suits.
Yes.
Not including anything else that could pop up down the road that is also some mucky water, gray area stuff. But the thing is that right now as it stands, there's already 3 issues, and a lot of those count to a decent amount of money. I mean, out of pocket, we've had to pay for the transition of all the mobile homes. That was like $1,000 something, and then we paid $3,000 just now for this getting done, not including the fact that you still got to get hooked up. So that's gonna be at least another $1,500. We'll say $2,000.
Now there's another potential anywhere as little as 500 all the way up to potentially 2,000, depending how we have to handle this whole lost title situation, the taxes that are gone on it, and so on and so forth. Like, I mean,
so we're talking,
it's adding up.
Yeah, we're talking $10,000 plus over the course of these multiple suits that we would have to go after the guy if everything didn't come through.
And then with some of these suits too, like sure, some of them could have been done in like magistrate court and everything else like that, but then if it gets too high of a dollar amount, next thing you know, we're going to be going into common pleas and now attorney. So now those fees are starting to get wrapped into it as well, and so on and so forth. And it could have been a real big disaster real quick. So I have to say I am very thankful that we are in an owner finance agreement where basically us as the buying party and him as the selling party have to work together.
Yeah, because it's literally in all of our best interests. Literally, because it saves us time and money and saves him time and money, and that's the thing that matters most. And everybody's literally winning. If it was like everything is all on one side or the other, it becomes a big problem. Most likely you're going to go to lawsuit. But because it's 100% in our best interest, compromises literally work in all of our favor. It's working out. So in this particular case, owner finance is actually the best case scenario we could have ever gotten into, and
because I know a lot more of what we need to look out for, what questions we need to ask, the titles and everything else that we need to see, the fact that the title taxes need to be paid at closing as well by them, and so on and so. There's a lot more information that we know now that we could have never known beforehand.
Yeah, because for example, most of our previous portfolios and houses that we generally own in our portfolio, even if they're mobile homes, they've already been detitled and they're attached to the land. So we've never had to deal with the county in particular with, 1, moving a mobile home, 2, transitioning just mobile home titles from one name to another, like going to the DMV and whatnot. The only time we've ever given to the DMV was dealing with campers and cars. We've never had to deal with a mobile home because we've never had to physically deal with just a mobile home title. We've always had the land with the mobile home already detitled on it. So all of our county experience has only been with dealing with just taxes. We've never had to do building and codes. We've never had to do, what's the other one? Developmental standards. Building codes. And then, of course, the taxes being 2 separate entities, being one the actual county, and then they're like the treasurer, and then the other one being the DMV, so having to get those two to work together. So this has definitely been a learning experience, which is why we're really glad, once again, that we're in this position. Because if this was a bigger dollar investment, or if it was like a straight cash purchase, or even if we had a loan or something going on it that could have been more costly down the road. Luckily, this was like literally the best case scenario that we could have been in to get into this learning curve. So overall, things are working out pretty great with that.
Hopefully you guys can watch this and you guys won't repeat half of the mistakes that we did if you are deciding to get into like a mobile home park or some kind or whatever else. But yeah, for us, this was phenomenal. And honestly, if you can get into some kind of an owner finance mobile home park, I highly recommend it.
Absolutely.
Because the thing is too is that the reason that power balance that Derek is talking about, here's the thing. This is what the contract said. This is what we agreed upon before we closed on it and we finalized everything else and we gave you our down payment. And now you have every right to hold them accountable, because if you withhold the right, keyword there, the right amount of payment from them based on something that they were supposed to perform that didn't get done, they have to go after you and take you to court for it, to sit there and prove that no, you should have been paying that and that they want their property back or whatever else. And most people know they're in the wrong when they are in the wrong. It is a true fact of life. Most people do know when they are wrong, and if they know that they are wrong, they are not going to put themselves in a position where they have to pay money to prove that they are wrong. Exactly. So yeah, but I think that's enough on that topic. We're gonna move on to the next thing, which is the investors are paid off.
We missed. Do it again.
Yeah. Finally, we are done. Tomorrow we are sending out the last payment. Now, while this is a very joyous and great occasion, have you guys ever seen that meme with like the ball guy where it's like, oh yay, the investors are paid off, and then there's like a bigger looming problem behind? Yeah. That's called taxes, my boy. Yeah. Because we currently owe about $13,000 in just property tax alone.
Yes. Well, that's not particular to this company. That's just like our portfolio in general.
Yeah.
But the reason why he's bringing that up is because if you remember,
I've dumped even like this last month when Derek gets into the budget. I've dumped the last bit of money I personally had because we needed it to just finally get through this last bit.
So we have been borrowing from the future
against ourselves.
Against ourselves and what we will produce in the long run. And with that being said, that is also against what we personally produce and the income that we currently have coming in, and then the profits that we'll have expected from the future on them. Well, the government doesn't give a shit. They just want their money, and it's always due the same time every year, January 15th. And so the timing of this
for corporate tax.
No, for property tax.
I'm sorry. Yeah, property tax. My bad.
We have corporate taxes and stuff we'll deal with later, but we don't know what those fees are yet. But the thing is, luckily our income tax is non-existent because we're both technically getting $1. But our property taxes we do know is anywhere between 11 and 13, depending on 6 and 4% on some things that we have ownership of. But anyways, point being is that a lot of the excess money that we were pushing forward, well, were either from like our personal savings or other income coming in from those other homes that we normally set aside for property taxes, or like small loans like pulling from a credit card for a temporary period of time, which means now we're taking interest on this hit just to pay things. So now we have to balance whether or not it's better to just take the interest off a credit card or take the interest from property taxes, because we literally financially we don't have enough money to pay all of it in time.
And the other thing is too,
we'll have it in about February, but we're going to be about a month shy.
This is again, we talked about this very early on, like where partnerships where you two have an aligned goal work very well, because the thing is that guess whose credit cards we're going to be putting all of the taxes on if we have to? It's going to be mine. Mm-hmm. Why? Because the thing is that by front loading it all onto me personally, onto my credit cards, yes, it puts me in a worse like credit spot and things like that, and like obviously it shows that I'm over leveraged on debt, but it keeps his clear, so that way he can go apply for loans for the company's behalf to then keep expanding it and keep going it, keep like growing it from there. And that's far more important, because more growth equals more profit, means that this probably gets solved faster.
Yeah, exactly.
And so this is where it's very beneficial where there are two people, but the looming tax problem is very, very close, and we're not necessarily scared.
No, it's not a big deal. It's just annoying. Because we're having to pay more money. So not only do we have the stupid auction that just came up with 136 and we have to pay the fees on it, because we're probably going to have to pay it out of pocket first and then get reimbursed later. So we're not only going to have to do that, but then we're also to physically pay our taxes, which once again means we're going to have to pay it up front as much as we can. If we can't, then we have to either take a tax hit, being like the actual tax fees, or credit card fees, or whatever else fees we get if we borrow from somebody else, because we won't mathematically have enough money. Barring some circumstances where we get like an extra $4,000 coming in, we're going to be about $4,000 short going into February.
And keep in mind this as
coming out
well, by the
January,
way,
going into February.
another very important lesson here. Again, so even though we have all these tax like potential issues and like us having to figure out how we want to like leverage them, how we're going to pay them off, what the payment plan we're going to set up for ourselves is on it. If you are in the same situation as us and you get an investor, do not use that investor's money to pay your taxes.
Yeah, it's really stupid.
Use that money to still invest in another property or whatever else you need to invest into. And then the profit off of that, you front load and dump all of that onto your taxes and your payments and everything else like that.
The only time you ever take an investment or some type of loan and put it towards another loan is if you're literally doing basically a refinance and you're just going to dramatically drop the interest rate.
So loan A, let's say we have a loan. Loan A is 10%.
Yeah.
And we got somebody that wanted to invest money into us and they're offering it at 5%. That's all they want. We just take their money and delete loan A.
Yeah.
That's perfectly fine because the thing is that actually, realistically speaking, that is an investment because now you're making a 5% spread while still paying them what they're supposed to be getting because you were obviously taking care of loan A to begin with.
Yeah. But we're not going to be paying out that much percentage in property tax fees, so it's pretty stupid for us to take a loan from somebody, which is going to cost us more because they're going to charge, like, say, 7% or something. The property tax fees we're going to be paying is like 5% or less, right? So why would we pay their money towards property taxes when it's going to cost us more money to pay them back? That's so stupid. So we'd rather just put it towards another investment, take the hit on the property taxes, get the return on the investment, and then put it towards property taxes and then paying them back in the long run.
And listen, I'm guilty of this, okay? I used to be terrified of IRS, taxes, government stuff, and everything else like that, dealing with like not paying your taxes or so on and so forth. Dude, believe it when I say the government does not care. They just want their money. If they have to make a payment plan with you to get their money, they will make a payment plan with you. If they have to sit there and work with you to where maybe you deferred for a set period of time based off you thinking that you will have this amount of funds by that period of time, they'll defer it for you. The government does not care. They do care is if you lie and if you avoid.
Or
that's where they care.
Or purposely refuse to pay.
Yes, that's where they care. So as long as you're not doing any one of those three, you're fine.
Yeah, like everybody always thinks like, oh God, you don't pay your taxes, you're going straight to jail. Dude, government is like, we have enough people in jail. We don't want you in there. We'd rather you pay.
Because it's actually ironic because you're refusing to pay your taxes, they put you in jail, then they use other taxpayer money to pay you being in jail now.
So that's exactly why it's like, oh God, I hate when I hear people like, oh, you gotta pay your taxes. Like, yeah, you do. Just you don't have to freak out and think you're gonna die overnight because it's like, oh, if you don't pay your taxes, you get a gun to the head because the IRS is gonna kill you. No, it's just you got to deal with a bunch more headaches and a bunch more fees, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
And luckily, it's not really that costly. I mean, as funny as it is, people don't realize this is actually an investment strategy. It is actually more beneficial sometimes to literally just do the payment plan with the government and not pay taxes directly because the amount of money that you saved putting into other investments and the interest rate that they charge is cheaper than getting a loan from somebody else. So, for example, like a general payback price for the government, like if you get on their loan, is like a 5-year loan at 5%, right? Versus getting like a 5-year loan from a private mortgage lender or private money lender, they're going to charge like 10 to 12%.
And also another thing too,
so sometimes it's better not to pay taxes.
By federal law, a lot of people don't know this. The maximum amount the IRS can ever charge you in interest is 25% of whatever is owed. So say we owed $100,000 in taxes. We create a 15-year payment plan with them. The most we will pay is $125,000.
Which
That's
means
it. That is it. They can't. They will not and cannot charge you more.
Which means they're basically like a slightly worse credit card.
Yeah.
The average credit card is around 22%, so they're just a little worse. So you literally have credit with the government at all times as a complete and total backup plan.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. Anyways.
But yeah, we'll move on from that. Just the point is that, again, I'm guilty of this as well. It's not that big of a deal.
Yep.
Don't break those three that we just mentioned and you'll be fine.
and once again, backing it all back up, we finally have the investors paid off.
Yeah.
Which means that we have now just profited, started in December, $2,661.
Yep.
Which is literally our entire freaking income, pretty much, off of this particular company.
Yep.
So that's great.
Now, this last part, this is more for you, Derek, because you handled most of this. We want to leave this off on some more good news, but the chargeback on the debit card.
Yeah, so if you remember last month...
Dumbest deal I ever heard.
Yeah, so if you remember last month, we were doing a chargeback for the lack of work that was done on 118. Or
back in like June and July.
Yeah, the whole disaster that was, the maintenance guy who had a partner split and all that crap that happened then. So point is, we had gotten a partial refund back at that point. We had gotten $500 and $360. Well, in total, we paid $1,000 for the first payment, then it was $360 for the second payment, then $775 for the demolition of another home. And the only one that really got done was the demolition, so that's the only one that really should have been paid. The rest of it should have been, like, we can argue labor and material costs, because, well, they didn't really get it all done. So anyway, so unfortunately we had to charge back on all of it, because the way the chargeback system works, we couldn't do a partial chargeback on certain systems, and so we had to do a chargeback on all of it. Well, the guy reached out to me earlier, actually very end of last month, like right after we did the video, and then very early this month to get it finalized, where he reached out to me and asked me if we could just do like a partial settlement kind of thing, where instead of him, because the way it was going to work is that we were going to get $1,000 and $360, we keep that, and then figure out what is due back to the maintenance people as well as
so materials. In a sense, to like kind of simplify it, we get all the money back.
Yeah.
And then we can redistribute the money how we
weren't going to keep the full amount.
Yeah.
So the full amount's like $2,100 something, right? So you just do $1,360 plus $775, right? Whatever that comes out to is $2,100 some change. So we were going to get all that back, but we weren't going to keep it. $775 does go back because it got done, and then of that we were going to keep $900 based off of the math that we did, because we had to pay $500 for an electrician, and then it was $400 was the split cost for materials and labor. We were going to take half back and then give them the half. So basically, they were going to get about $400 back. Now, with that being said, the guy asked me for a settlement in advance this year if he could just get $400 out of the entire amount that we are getting paid back, which means that out of the $2,100 and some change, he just wanted $400 because he didn't want to have to go through the process anymore of not knowing when he might get his money, because the money's already taken out of the bank and it's sitting in PayPal, and they didn't know when they were going to disperse it back out. He didn't want to deal with the headache of it. He didn't want to go through the
so dumb, because if you just would have waited,
like a week or two.
If you would have waited 5 days, because Derek literally called me about this.
Yeah.
He was like, "Hey, I know we don't have a lot of money, but here's the deal." And I was just like, "Excuse me, he's willing to do what?"
Yes.
I was like, yes, agree to it. Because the thing is, after he agreed to it, and then Derek went on ahead and paid him out, 5 days later, it came in. If he just would have waited like 5 days, he would have gotten the agreed upon amounts.
So in total, what we've gotten $500 from last month, $360 from last month, and then $775 from this month. The only amount that hasn't come in is $500. But even if that money doesn't come in, we are still in a better position, because originally we were going to be paying $775 back plus a potential $400 and some change. So that would have been $1,100 or $1,200. Now we're just paying $400 and there's $500 floating out there, which means in worst case we only we lost $900. But
so dumb.
Even in that agreement that I made with him, I had it put in there that if there is an amount that is not paid back to us, then they are legally required to pay that amount back, or we can sue them for it. So that $500, if it does go back in another bank account, they have to physically pay it to us. So no matter what, we are going to somehow land at $400 total paid back out, which means we have effectively gotten free labor, free materials on this entire property for 118, and we reduced the cost of demolition of 138. So overall, to get labor, materials, and demolition done, all within the span of about 2 months, cost us $400. Talk about a bomb deal, my dude. Yeah, it was a pain in the ass, it was a headache here and there dealing with all this over the course of time, but I'm gold with $400 for all that. That means they got paid like less than $1 an hour.
It's disgusting.
Man.
I couldn't believe just waiting.
Yep.
Just waiting 5 more days, and it would have been the correct and what we felt was fair and accurate amount. Taking a $400 settlement. Not we're not gonna say the other contractor's name again here, but I have a feeling that gambling addiction rumor might actually be a lot truer than
I was
you and I expected.
I think he got himself into a financial bind. He was just desperate to cover his tracks or do something to cover his losses.
But I think that's everything on that. I think now it's time for the budget.
That is literally all of our updates. So the budget's actually really pretty simple this month. It's
Vlad is now broke.
So we had to do our final personal investment into this because once again, mostly we're paying out of pocket for those investors that were involved. But now that they're finally done, we don't have to do this crap anymore. Now we actually, I want to clarify, we actually wouldn't have had to pay personally if everybody had paid their money this month, which is insane because we are now finally at a position where we're bringing in a lot of money once this is all said and done. So with that being said, I just put it together as a big fat number because I don't feel like writing it all out individually. But basically, we got $425 from about 4 or 5 tenants. We got $320 was a partial payment from one tenant. $124 hasn't paid at all, so they owe us $425. $108 hasn't paid at all either, which is our big money maker. They, if you remember, just went up in price. So they were originally at $500, then they went to $780. But if you also remember last month, they paid late, so they paid like $830 or something. And then this month, their base amount was $780. They haven't paid at all, and so the total late fee on top of that is now $880. So they owe us a total of $880 literally the next couple days, otherwise they're getting evicted. Now, I did actually just speak with them recently, so they're giving me some reasons that they may or may not be able to. So we'll see what happens in the next couple days. We'll let you know next month. But basically,
next month might actually just be a big eviction month.
Yeah, pretty much. So basically, those are the two big payments. And if you remember also, the other payment we kind of missed was last month. If you remember, we had the people at 118 who were pretty much effectively squatting there for a month, and then eventually we're moving out, and then we were going to take it back and get somebody else in there. And they were supposed to give us a half payment. We never got that half payment, which we kind of expected. That's why I didn't include it in the budget. So with that being said, we actually didn't make as much money as we should have been making last month. But if we did make that, we would actually be $600 even higher of a budget. Or if they just gave us a half budget, $350, about 25, whatever it was. They paid $650, so $325 over. But either way, so we're down $880 plus $425 plus a half payment. So overall, we're down like $1,600 or some change. With that being said, we're actually still in a pretty good spot because we had some other very good news, which, as he mentioned, Barnwell sold, which pretty much completely offset 108 not paying. If you think about it, $400 for their monthly and the $500 down they put in, that's $900. That offsets what normally 108 would pay plus their late fee, because they're currently due $880 and we got $900. So that pretty much wiped that slate clean. The only real negative we went was just not getting any money off of 124, which really isn't that big of a deal because it's only a negative 425 if you really think about it. And then of course the fact that we didn't make any money last month, but once again didn't include it in the budget anyways. So that's really, we did fine, surprisingly. Yeah. Now if either one of them pay, that's great. We're going back in the higher budget. So with that being said, overall what we received from all the tenants and whatnot, from all of our properties, it includes Jonesville and like I said, and 641 Barnwell, we got $5,270. Because once again, we did get a partial payment from a couple of tenants, so they didn't pay a full amount either. So we got $5,270, and then because we did get that $775 refunded to us this month, but we did pay $400 out. Like I said, there's still $500 floating out there somewhere. We still went net positive on that $375, right? $775 minus $400, $375. So we added that to the budget. So total, we got $5,645. Now, one of the beneficial things of it being this every other month system is that we did not pay the utilities this month. So that does help us going into next month once we get everything 100% stabilized, because we did the pay out of pocket once again for getting that mobile home moved. So because we didn't have to pay that this month, our actual bill this month for our credit cards for just random things we had to pay for was very cheap. It was only $162. So all in all being said, we paid $3,000 out for moving the mobile home, which once again, $1,953 of that is normally paid out for the mortgage. We're not paying that this month. So really, we only went negative around $1,100 on top of what we normally did. So $3,000 paid out for that. $1,200 is the regular payment we pay for our maintenance guy. Then we normally pay the $2,661 to the investors, which now is the final payment. We don't pay that from this point forward. And then, of course, the $162 that we paid for the credit card, meaning that overall our total brought in $5,645, total paid out $7,023, net negative $1,378, which is insane. Because, like I said, what that means is that if we would have gotten the payment from 108, would have gotten a payment from 124, and we would have only had to pay the mortgage this month, we would have been a net positive of like $2,000, which is nuts. Because once again, that's including that we were paying these other investors. Now, if that all had been said and done, and we didn't have to pay the investors, we'd be net like $5,000 this month, just shy of it. That's how insane that is. So now that the investors are paid off, we are now a net positive of $2,661 on top of what we normally pay. So we don't actually have really any debts or any other issues to deal with. And then because we're constantly paying out of pocket for other crap, it doesn't seem like we're going to be paying the mortgage for a little while either, because we still got, like I said, the utilities hooked up and whatnot. And we're actually working out a deal with our maintenance guy, which in good news, he's got his truck finally working, so he's able to finally get to the damn job and do the work. So that was like literally in the last 5 days, so it just happened. So with that being said, we're working out a deal with him that he's going to be doing most of the utility hookups, which will save us a crap ton of money than having to pay an actual electrician, plumber, and whatever else to get out there. So with that being said, we can mitigate some of the costs in that regard, but still charge the full price over to the previous owner, because once again, it's his fault for not doing it. And so it still works out in our best interest for both sides, because we're basically getting the labor done, we're getting it at a discount, and he's getting everything taken care of that he would have had to pay for anyways, and we're going to charge it to him less than it would have been if he would have still had to pay. So say it's a 50% discount for us, we're charging 25% discount to him. So he still gets a discount, we're just taking a little bit off the middle.
Yep.
And then our maintenance guy has more income and work to do. So overall, we'll be in a very, very good spot in December and on. We literally can't be. In fact, unless the park catches on fire, we are fine.
I think our best position is probably going to be, if I had to pinpoint it, I'm probably going to say April. Because then we'll finally be done with our tax season. We will have made the decision about what debts we are going to aggressively pay back off. Because keep in mind, by the way, because of this mobile home park, the investors and everything else, both Derek and I are still carrying personal debt from the creation of this company still. Like that hasn't gone away. It's looming in the background still. It's just they are on easy to manage payment plans right now, but just because something's on an easy to manage payment plan doesn't mean you want to leave it on that with how much you're getting charged in interest every single year. But yeah, I have a feeling that hopefully by April we will have gotten a lot of this resolved, a lot of this stuff paid back, and then it's actual proper profitable, like generating income for us to then move forward and start working on new projects and new horizons and continuing on from there.
Yeah, to kind of follow up on that, so basically where we'll be at, assuming all things stay relatively the same, we'll be bringing in around $5,000 to $5,500 a month in just gross income. Our debts are going to be around $2,000 to $2,500 to $3,500, depending on repairs and things that we have to do with and some other stuff. So generally, our net is going to be anywhere between $2,000 to $2,500.
Yep.
Right? That means we'll have that amount of money is going straight in our bank account. So with that being said, like he was talking about, obviously we have a lot of debts that we got to pay up. So first is property taxes, and then it's all the other debts we have. Now, with that $2,500, we do have our personal investments that also still produce profits. So that's how we're able to come up with most of the money to pay all of our property taxes. Like
but the thing is that we're still going to pay ourselves back that money.
And so that's when. And that's what I was going to get to. So basically, right now, the way it sits is because we just got to pay property taxes in general. Unfortunately, we still got to commingle some of our funds into this company, get the property taxes all taken care of. Luckily, this company is actually financially afloat now. Because once it starts producing around that 2,000 plus range of profit, the property taxes and everything is about $4,000.
I'm sorry. It only took 11 plus months.
Yeah,
it only took 11 months.
Well, statistically speaking, it's almost impossible.
It's still insane because the thing is that once again, our first company, I tell the story on stream a lot. Our first company, in our first year, we finally, before it hit 12 months, we brought in $98 of profit.
Yeah, that's right.
And now our second company is almost at $5,000 in its first year. Which, yes, Technically, statistically speaking, both of those should have been negative for at least another year or two.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, so with that being said, so if it starts producing around the $2,000 to $2,500 range, like we're expecting, not including any other circumstances, like we get the mobile home up and running kind of thing, if that all works out the way it does, then we had to pay about $4,000 alone in property taxes and just general taxes in the total for the mobile home park. And then we have a couple other taxes for Calhoun Falls, which isn't much. I think it's like $300. And then I don't know what Jonesville is, but if I had to guess, because of the union, they're a little higher. So I'd say like $500 to $600. So we'll say an extra $1,000 total there. So we got to pay about $5,000 in property taxes. So once again, easy math, 2 months of $2,500 profit. So December and January, straight to property taxes. This is why he's saying in April, because that means in February, March, and probably in April, we're paying ourselves back the amount that we had to pay forward going into this company. So this would be roughly $7,500 getting paid back to us. Probably more because we're expected to escalate at that point. But at least around that amount to pay back credit cards, personal investments, whatever else we're doing. And then the rest of it just stays with the company and grows with it. But generally speaking, like I said, we don't have any other pop-up debts outside of, the only one we're not sure of yet is our corporate taxes, which aren't due until March. So we'll know what that'll be way down the road. As
we're probably going to have a lot of updates for you guys. Hopefully, like I said, the way usually things work, December should be a very quiet month for us. It should be. Usually that's what happens. We get a breather, we get a mental relaxation, and then as once January hits, that's usually where it just tanks right back into issues and problems. The thing is though is that we'll probably be having a lot of updates for you guys in regards to corporate taxes in January, because that'll be the first year we actually are going to have to deal with corporate taxes instead of individual.
Barring some drama that happens at the mobile home park, most likely December is going to be pretty much like, I'll probably go ahead and tell you right now, December's not going to be anything like in terms of actual December, because we're not planning on doing anything. Because once again, it's pretty much a quiet month. We're just pocketing all the money, throwing it in taxes, and we're not going to have an hour-long video talking about us paying property taxes. It's like a 5-second thing. We're like, yeah, here's our property taxes, here's what we paid, we're done. So what we'll probably do is most likely in December, we'll probably just do a year in review and just talk about everything that we had up to this year. So all the money that we've brought in, all the money that we spent, all the stuff that we've generally had to do. So just kind of like a recap on the year. So generally December is pretty much going to be a minor December update, general just year in review. And then starting in January, it'll go back to the month-to-month style updates where we actually have content to talk about, because starting in January is, like you said, usually shit hits the fan again. And then we'll tell you what that crap is. So with that all being said, that is pretty much the entire update for November, and it's, like I said, pretty much the last major update of the year. So we'll still see you in December, give you the full update for the year, but outside of that, do you have any other things you want to bring up?
I'm good.
Cool. Well, financially we're free!
That is true.
Woo!
That is very true.
God, it's a relief to see it. But anyways, with that being said, we're all done, and we'll see you in the next update. See you guys.
Peace.